My camera bag bounced against my hip as I stepped off the dusty bus into an endless sea of golden grass. The ranch gate creaked a welcome, and I inhaled sweet alfalfa mingled with warm leather and wild sage. I'd come to photograph vanishing cowboy souls, but my own curiosity had quietly ignited something far deeper inside. A weathered sign read, "Broken Spur Ranch," and just beyond it stood a man carved entirely from sunset in silence. His hat shadowed eyes the color of rain-soaked earth, and his stillness hummed louder than any words ever could. I introduced myself with a nervous smile, but he only touched his chest and offered a small written note. "Jace," it said in careful letters, and then he pointed toward the horse barn with a gentle nod. The foreman whispered that Jace lost his voice in a bull riding accident, yet he speaks through everything else. Curiosity flared like wildfire inside me, and I followed his silent footsteps across the dew-kissed morning pasture ground. He knelt beside a skittish colt and placed my trembling hand softly against the animal's warm, quivering neck. No words passed, but his eyes taught me that trust lives inside the space between breaths and steady heartbeats. That afternoon, he guided me to mend a barbed wire fence, his calloused fingers correcting my clumsy attempts with patience. When I pricked my thumb, he pressed a wildflower petal against the tiny wound and smiled without a sound. I started hearing things I'd never noticed before, the whisper of wind through pines and the prairie's playful song. He wrote in the red dirt with a stick, "The land talks if you listen," and my soul leaned closer. At dusk, he saddled a paint mari and lifted me up, his strong hands lingering just long enough to burn. We rode through violet shadows while the sky bled orange and pink, and I forgot the whole noisy world existed. He dismounted by a creek, scooped cobalt water into his hat, and offered it to me like a sacred gift. I drank and understood that silence can say more than 1,000 shouted declarations ever could in a lifetime. That night by firelight, he sketched a galloping horse on a scrap of buckskin and handed it to me gently. The drawing stole my breath, and I pressed it to my journal, already rewriting everything I thought I knew about connection. Next morning, I woke before dawn and found him already brushing honey-colored horses with a tenderness that made me ache. I asked with my eyes if I could help, and he handed me a curry comb, his lip twitching with quiet amusement. Side by side, we groomed until sunrise spilled gold across the barn, and my heartbeat synced to his unhurried rhythm. He poured black coffee into a chipped enamel cup and added a single sugar cube without my asking for it. I realized he had watched me sweeten my coffee the day before, and unexpectedly, my throat tightened with sweet emotion. Over breakfast, he wrote on a napkin, "What made a city girl chase dust in silence?" And I struggled to answer. I stammered that I wanted the truth behind romanticized cowboy lore, but honestly, I had been chasing a missing piece. He traced one finger over my knuckles and then pointed toward the mesa, inviting me into his untamed sanctuary. We climbed red rock ridges where petroglyphs whispered ancient stories, and he explained with expressive hands and heart-lit eyes. I photographed him framed by endless sky, and something dangerously tender unfurled inside my chest without any permission at all. A summer storm rolled in fast, and we took shelter beneath a sandstone overhang while lightning split the bruised heavens. Rain drummed an ancient song, and he turned to me with a question burning in his deep, ruggedly beautiful gaze. Slowly, he wrote in the damp earth, "Do you feel the silence speaking now?" And my tears mixed with rain. I nodded because every cell in my body had already answered yes before my mind could catch up to it. He cupped my face, his thumb brushing away raindrops and tears with a reverence I'd never been blessed to receive. Our foreheads touched beneath that stone cathedral, and I tasted the untold poetry that lived inside his perfect stillness. When the clouds parted, a double rainbow arched over the canyon, and he gestured as if painting it just for me. That evening, the ranch hands gathered for a campfire, and Jace sat close, his knee resting ever so slightly against mine. Old Mac played harmonica, and Jace tapped the rhythm on my palm, telling me songs he'd carried since boyhood days. I fell asleep under a blanket of stars, with his jacket draped over me, smelling like saddle soap and cedar woods. Morning came with meadowlark melodies, and I discovered he'd placed a braided horse hair bracelet around my wrist while I dreamed. I confronted him with a playful shove, and he just shrugged, mischief dancing in those beautiful, impossibly deep mahogany eyes. He scribbled on a feed sack, "Every cowboy's promise is tied in knots," and pressed his hand over his steady heart. My assignment deadline loomed, and I dreaded the thought of leaving this hushed world that had completely rewritten me. I packed my camera reluctantly, and he appeared with a leather journal, its pages filled with his own penciled stories. He'd chronicled his life after losing his voice, each page a window into loneliness, courage, and unwavering hope for connection. He wrote a final note: "Stay curious and let the land speak," and tucked a pressed prairie rose into my palm. I boarded the same dusty bus, but my heart shattered and scattered like chaff across every acre of that ranch. Back in the city, the noise assaulted me, but I kept hearing the creek, the wind, and his unspoken declaration. I printed his photograph and hung it beside my desk, yet the paper couldn't contain his quiet, magnetic soul at all. Weeks passed, and my published article went viral, but the only response I craved came from a silent Wyoming horizon. One evening a package arrived, a small cedar box holding wildflower seeds and a single sentence on buckskin: "Land misses you." I booked a one-way ticket before dawn, leaving my apartment, my doubts, and my old restless life scattered behind me forever. The bus rolled into broken spur country, and my heart galloped ahead, already knowing exactly where home had always been waiting. He stood at the same gate beneath a cottonwood tree, holding a bouquet of goldenrod and the gentlest sunrise smile. I ran into his open arms, and without a single syllable, he spoke volumes into my hair, into my bones. That summer, we rebuilt the old line shack together, and I learned to swing a hammer while he patiently grinned. He taught me to ride with my hips and not my hands, and the horses became our shared, unbreakable language. We branded calves in the crisp autumn air, and I earned my first pair of worn chaps and a calloused heart. On our wedding day, beneath a willow arbor, his vows were written in charcoal on weathered barnwood for everyone to see. The words read, "You heard my silence and answered with your own sacred song," and the whole valley wept with joy. Our first child arrived during a blizzard, and Jace delivered her himself, his steady hands louder than any prayer spoken. He named her Sage, and when she cried, he hummed vibrations against her tiny chest until she stilled in peace. I photographed him teaching Sage to rope, their shared laughter echoing through the corrals like a melody carved from heaven. Every evening, he still writes love letters in the dirt, and I reply with wildflower petals arranged into heartfelt silent confessions. Our ranch grew into a sanctuary for wounded horses and weary souls, seeking the quiet power of unspoken human kindness. Sage grew tall and curious, asking why Daddy didn't talk, and I smiled. "He speaks the truest language, little one." On our 10th anniversary, he led me blindfolded to a newly built gazebo overlooking the very mesa where love began. He handed me a carved wooden sign reading, "The Listening Heart Ranch," and I broke into grateful, irreparable, joyful pieces. Tourists and journalists now come searching for the cowboy whose silence roars, but he only grants stories to those listening. He never regained his voice physically, yet his message reached millions through the photographs and words I faithfully shared worldwide. One golden afternoon, Sage interviewed us with her toy microphone, asking what keeps a love so alive without spoken words. He gently touched my lips and then his chest, and I translated, "We hear each other's souls in every single heartbeat." The viral video of that moment captured authentic American cowboy spirit, not through noise, but through the profound power of presence. At night, we still sit on the porch swing, his thumb tracing love notes onto my palm beneath the infinite starfields. He taught me that curiosity is a compass, and silence is an emptiness. It's the richest language ever woven by human souls. I thought I came to document a vanishing way of life, but instead I found forever in the speechless rancher's soulful eyes. Now, I write our story into the channel WesternTales Official, hoping every curious girl hears the call of the listening land. Our grandkids will one day see these images and know that true cowboy grit is gentle, and real love never needs volume. The ranch thrives on harmony, not shouts, and every rescued horse carries the echo of a cowboy who spoke without sound. Sage now runs the program alongside a young farrier who loves her with hot coffee and quiet gestures learned from her father. I'm no longer just a curious girl with a camera. I'm a keeper of sacred silences that outlast any fleeting spoken promise. So if you find a silent cowboy in a world you never knew, stay long enough to hear what's never been audible. WesternTales Official invites you to ride into a story where silence says everything, and love writes its own unforgettable legend.